I said I'd see you guys in 2 minutes. That will only make sense if you watched last week. So I'm just going to assume that you watched last week. See, if you did, you might be like Miss Chelsea, which is who I am. I don't think I introduced myself last week. Oops, Miss Chelsea here. You might be like, Miss Chelsea, you look exactly the same. And that's because it is literally 2 minutes after I filmed that lesson because I'm on vacation this week. Not like in this moment, but when this video comes out and you're watching it, I'm going to be relaxing and having a good time and all of the wonderful things. But for now, I get to be here giving our last lesson on faith. Now, we know that it's not really the last lesson on faith. I mean, it's church. We're going to keep talking about faith. But for this series about faith, which is trusting in what you can't see because of what you can, this is our last lesson for this. And we've been talking all about the early church, things they went through. We've learned a lot about Paul. And today we're going to shift to a different disciple, John. But before we get into that, I want to know, for this week's question, what is one thing that you are looking forward to? Now, it could be a number of things. Maybe you do have a trip coming up. Maybe you're looking forward to when you can go back to school, which sounds crazy, but who knows? Maybe there's 1,000 things. I just want to know, what are you looking forward to? Cool. I mean, I don't actually know if it was cool, but I'm sure you guys humored me and said some really cool things. Personally, I'm looking forward to my birthday, which is in a couple of months, and I'm gonna be 30, which is crazy, but I'm actually really excited to kind of take this next step out of my 20s. It makes me feel more dignified. Like, yes, I am a real adult. I'm 30 years old, and parents in the room are probably laughing because that's not how it works. But guys, I just let me believe it, just like for a little bit, okay? Either way, moving on. For our final lesson on faith, we are jumping through the end of the Bible because, we've been going through it. We started in Genesis, we've been going through different books, we've been in Acts in the New Testament, and now we're in the book of Revelation. And we're going to learn more about how the book of Revelation came to be and some of the things that are included. So everyone sit back, relax, and let's get ready for a word.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. And now for an amazing story.
All right, so we are talking about the book of Revelation. Now, to talk about the book of Revelation and God's promises in there, we have to get the context of what happened. See, it's a letter written by the disciple John. Now, John at this point in his life was on an island with a bunch of prisoners, and the island was called Patmos. Now, by this point in history, past Paul and Peter and all of that, a lot of the early disciples ended up being killed for what they believed, being hurt, and John had to watch a lot of his friends die for what they believed in. And he got exiled onto this island where he was going to live out the rest of his life. So that's where he's at, which is kind of a downer, I admit. But these people, all of the disciples, willingly gave their lives for what they believed in sharing. So it's sad, but it's also an amazing testimony to this thing that we believe in. And John wasn't quite finished yet, despite being on the island. And maybe he did. I mean, I'm sure he shared with the other prisoners, but that kind of feels like the end of things, doesn't it? But Jesus has a way of surprising us, and that's exactly what happened. See, one day, John is on the island of Patmos, just doing whatever he did on the island of Patmos, I honestly don't know, and he hears a voice, and he hears trumpets, and it's very loud, and there's fanfare, and he's probably like, what is happening? Because this doesn't happen on the island. And then it turns out that the voice he hears is the voice of Jesus. What? And we see that in Revelation 1, starting in verse 17. When I saw him, and this is John, I fell at his feet as if I were dead. But he laid his right hand on me and said, "Don't be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I died, but look, I am alive forever and ever." So John sees Jesus. And remember, you and I learn about Jesus and we experience Jesus and we have a good time. John actually walked with Jesus. Jesus was his literal friend. I mean, Jesus is my friend, but like literal friend. Like literally they hung out together, IRL friend. And you know, at this point he'd been gone for so many years and he got to see him again. And John was just overwhelmed with emotion. But Jesus didn't just end there. He wasn't just checking in to see how his friend John was doing. He had an important message to give him, and it was about the kingdom of heaven. And it was really amazing, and we're going to actually jump ahead to chapter 21, which is where a lot of this really comes from. Now, the book of Revelation, which is a letter that John put all of what he had seen into and sent out to people, is full of a lot of mysteries. I mean, to be honest, this is not the scholarly answer, but it's a weird book. There's a lot of very strange things, but there's also a lot of beautiful things, and it's a book that should be studied. We really don't have time, and I certainly don't know enough about it to go into details, but keep that in mind if you're ever casually reading Revelation. It's not just going to be like reading a Bible story. There's a lot of very big and interesting, mysterious things. And as John was seeing all of these things, as God was showing them, he was filled with all of these emotions. He was trembling. He was excited because there's a lot going on. And all of those things we don't really get to know about. But we're going to talk about a few of the concepts. Starting with the first thing that John is shown is a new heaven and a new earth in verse 21. And it kind of took him back to remembering what Jesus had said to him when he was actually on earth. And it's in John, you know, the book of John. So John heard this when he was on earth. Jesus said, "There is more than enough room in my Father's house. If it were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am." Now, John is now seeing that place that he went to, right? It's a very real thing. And he gets to see Jesus there and welcoming him into this new heaven and this new earth. And then in the verses later, no, I gotta get back to Revelation. Sorry, I was like, wait a minute, these don't look like the right verses. Jesus talked about the new heaven and the new earth. And now he's showing John directly. But it keeps going. We see in verses 3 through 4 in Revelation 21 all about... okay. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain." Now, isn't that amazing? When we're with Jesus in heaven forever, there's no more sadness. Think about all the things in life that make you sad. I know I have a lot. Think about all the times things have made you cry and the pain that you feel. I mean, again, we live in an imperfect world, and things are going to happen that we don't like, and they're going to upset us. But this world, it's not like that. The world we're going to is without any of that. And it's so hard to imagine because all we know is this one. But a world where it's not there. It's been erased. There's no crying, no pain, no sadness. I mean, man. But still, the story continues on. John saw a really bright light. But the city has no need for sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light. So there's a lot of light in heaven, but it's not lit like our world. Like our world is obviously electricity, but we have the sun and the moon, and that's what we've always had to help guide us. But It's literally just God in heaven. It's just the glory of God illuminating the city. Like, oh, can you even imagine what light looks like? What light like that looks like? How bright that would be and how wonderful? Like, oh my gosh, I can't. But then it kept going. The angel who was showing the vision showed John the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne into the center down Main Street. A beautiful crystal clear river. Now, I don't know about you, but I love me a good body of water. So this, a beautiful crystal, like, talk about awesome, a beautiful crystal river. But it wasn't just the river that he saw. On each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit with a fresh crop each month. So we have this beautiful light from God. We have this crystal clear river that runs through the city. And on either side, we have these trees of life. Like, this vision is just so comforting. It's like my happy place. I love being outside and just resting beneath the tree. And we're getting this beautiful vision of what there is. But John wasn't just shown, the throne, the light, the tree, and the river. He also saw people. In Revelation 22, verses 3 and 4, we see that his servants will worship him, and they will see his face, and their name will be written on their foreheads. So in heaven, people are just super stoked and excited and worshiping. And they're just honored to be there with God. And that's the greatest thing, because again, there's nothing else that we face except for the goodness of God. Just straight goodness of God. Now, John ended all of this. He ended his letter with may the grace of the Lord Jesus be with God's holy people. Now, he saw this amazing thing and then was saying, may the grace of God be with you. He had experienced it in his life before, and now he got to see what comes next. Now, the thing you can see, though, is that we have pieces of the puzzle, right? From the book of Revelation. We pulled out these really powerful things, but we don't have all of the pieces. Like, this is not a complete puzzle. And that's the point. We don't know everything, but what we do know is pretty spectacular. And our bottom line for today is following Jesus will turn out greater than you can imagine. Now, this is both in our life and the next, because following Jesus, we know, gets us to this. Gets us to a place with no sadness. Gets us to a place with just worshiping. Gets us to a place with awesome trees and light from God's glory. Like, that's amazing. But we also know that following Jesus now will turn out better than expected, because we always have somebody who's there with us on our side. We're never in it alone when we have Jesus. And even if we don't know how it's going to turn out, we know the end result. We know what's going to happen. We know where we're going. And that gives us the confident hope in everything that we do. And that's why we can have faith. That's why we can choose to trust in what we can't see, because of what we can see, because of the promises, and the promises fulfilled. I mean, if you know nothing else, God keeps his promises. And this is our promise. A life following Jesus, this is our promise. I wish personally that we had all the pieces, because it's strange to not understand all of it, but also God is mysterious. And if we knew everything, then what would be the point of searching after him more? Because we already had all the answers. At least that's what I tell myself. All right, we're going to pray, and I'm going to close out for the week. Dear God, thank you for appearing to John on that island to show him a glimpse of your kingdom, God. Thank you that John put what he saw into words so that we can get pieces of what's waiting for us. And we have the reminder that following you will turn out better than we can imagine, God. We can imagine a lot of great things in you, but it is always, what you do will always be better than we can actually imagine. And thank you for that. Thank you as we live our lives following you. And we're excited for what it comes next, God. And we're excited for everything that you do in our lives, God. I lift up our families. I lift up our kids. I lift up everyone. I lift up those around the world who are dealing with the coronavirus, both if they're physically affected or just, trying to stay safe and all that, God. I pray that we all just keep trusting you and following you in all that we do. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, everyone. That just about wraps us for... Sometimes I speak so fast, I literally don't know what I just said. That was gibberish. So, as we wrap up for this week, we have one final prompt that you can do for week 4 for the faith log. So again, even if you don't have this printed, you can still do this because I think it's a really good exercise. And it's, what do I hope for in heaven? Now, people have a lot of different interpretations on heaven. Just like I said, the book of Revelation is weird. And again, I'm sorry if anyone's offended by that. It's an interesting book, but people interpret it differently. And they also have different ideas of what it's going to be like when we get there. Now, personally, I'm not a scholar, as I've mentioned numerous times. So I just like to think of the best thing that I can imagine. And that's where I'm going, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I'm wrong, because I'm still going. And I'm not going to be like disappointed. I'm not going to be like, Jesus, this is not nearly as bright as I expected. Like, I thought this river was going to be crystal clear and I'm super disappointed. No, it's heaven. I'm going to be stoked to be there. So in the meantime, it helps sometimes, because it's such a big abstract thing, to think about what I want from heaven. And again, I'm not saying that this is how it is, but it just helps me personally to imagine heaven this way. So what do I hope for in heaven? First and foremost, I hope that my dogs are there. I've had a couple of dogs that have passed in my lifetime, and I loved them so much, and I would love nothing more than when I get there for them to be like running toward me as I go. Because I feel like, what better reception than, first of all, get to meet Jesus. Second of all, these dogs that I loved so much are now with me. Now, who knows if that'll happen, but that's what I hope for. So I want to know, what do you hope for? Take some time in your faith log, or just write it down, talk with your family, talk more about heaven, talk more about the amazingness that is waiting for us, and also just the blessing of a life following Jesus. All right, that wraps us up for July. And I actually very terribly did not research what we're doing in August. So that's on my bad. So I can't tell you right now what's going to happen next month. But I will end this video with the slides for next month so you can see it, even though I personally can't tell you. So that about wraps us up, guys. Thank you so much for another week of watching, of learning, of listening, of spending time with your family, and all of the good things. I hope that you had a really great time, and I will see you again soon. Bye, everyone.